continuation to the divine laws, I would like to quickly recap. These sets of laws that we're seeing over here is basically the moral aspect of the doctrine, is basically the gospel according to the Spiritus. The book, the gospel according to Spiritus, just expands on everything that is in this third book of the moral laws. Kardec, in the very beginning of this chapter, of this book, the third book, I mean, so the moral laws, have asked the Spirit if it was okay to subdivide these laws. We understand there is one and only law. And Kardec specifically asked if dividing two different subtypes, of the laws would be okay. And the Spirit answered, do whatever you want. Just as long as you understand, okay, that there's one law. If for didactic reasons you choose to divide it, yeah, it's a good idea, go ahead and do it. But understand there is one and only law of divine nature that comes from God. And the more important is learn and apply it. Now, you want to divide in 300 little pieces, though? Anyway. And Kardec divided wisely in 10 parts. And right now we're covering the law of labor. But again, I always like to remind, it's one law. It's the divine laws. The same laws of the physics, the same laws of gravity, the same laws of genetics, the same law of electrodynamics. It's all divine in nature, okay? Being physical or being moral, it's all one and the same. It is important that we divide for that reason. It's easier to teach if you break down things, right? And right now we are covering the law of labor or the law of work. And we have started the last part a few weeks back also. The first law, the law of worship, and this law, the law of labor, is in our relationship towards God. Okay. When the Pharisees asked Jesus, what is the most important of the commandments? Jesus said, the very first one, right? To love God your Father with all your power, with all your strength, with all your intellect, with all your everything. And the second that is equally good, love your neighbor as you love yourself. Right? And he states that all the laws and the prophets are inside of these two things. So all the laws and the prophets requirements, love God, love your neighbors, love yourself. If you reach that, we are the doctors in laws. To love God, ourselves, and to love our neighbors. Now you could question, how will I demonstrate my love to God? Then you have the worship. We cover here is the first one. Kardec always started God, because everything starts with God. So the first law, the law of worship, and the second one, the law of labor. That is also in the demonstration of our love to God. Because how else would you do it? Sacrifices. In the past, it was used. How long are we going to remain in the state of primitivism? We still believe in the sacrifice to please God. As Arthur Valadares said, want to sacrifice something? Yes, go ahead and do sacrifice. Sacrifice of passions, sacrifice of vices, sacrifice of selfishness, sacrifice of pride, kill them all. God will be very pleased with that. But other than that, sacrifice will not please God in any way. But work, yes. Work for your improvement. Work, as you're going to see here soon in the law of reproduction, Work will make this world what you live better. Work will make your neighbors better. So it is a reference of our love towards God, the law of labor. And labor, work, the Spirit defined over here is any useful activity. And by saying that, it leaves somewhat vague, but by design, because it's not only about occupation. It's not about having a profession. It's not only about physical activity, intellectual activity, arts, everything is work. Anything that is useful, everything that brings something good to oneself or to others, we can call it work, we can call it labor, right? And also in the very beginning, the Spirit told us, though those laws, the moral laws was created for the happiness of men. God came to bring us happiness. So the law of labor being one of the divine laws is meant to bring us happiness. It took us a long time to understand that. We're still trying to understand that yet. I always say the happiness to us is vacation, right? To me, happiness is vacation. Work is work. And it's been that, seeing that for a long time. Amongst the Greek, it was an embarrassment to work. Work is for the slaves. So we,
Can I see my computer? No.
Okay. So we have come a long way to understand that the labor work is indeed a source of happiness and not a source of embarrassment. That it is through work that we develop ourselves. Without work, we would stagnate in ignorance. So, but with work in the law of work and the law of labor, that is the defined benevolence, that's lack of rest. Right? Even our laws, we in our ignorance, we now understand that we need to rest as well. Cannot only just work. So in natural laws, the divine laws, there is the aspect of rest, and that's what we are going to cover starting today. Any questions, any comments to this point? All right, let's go, Philip, please. 682.
As rest after labor is a necessity, is it a law of nature? Definitely. Rest restores the bodily powers and is also necessary to give a little more freedom to the mind, allowing it to rise above matter.
I'm sure João covered that, but this book, the very first edition is 1856, the second edition 1859, I believe, 1860, right? And we need to place ourselves at that historical time in Europe. You know, there was no law, there was no laws that limit labor, right? And there was child labor, you know, the lower classes would work 7 days a week, 15, 18 hours until they drop dead. There was no laws. And so those laws or those questions of Kardec are extremely significant to that time. And unfortunately, some places of the world it is applicable still today, right? But we know better. We know that rest is necessary, right? And necessary because it restores the bodily powers. We need to rest. We have to replenish our energy in order to continue to work before you just drop that, as I just said. And the mind needs time to do something else. So imagine someone who works in, I don't know, anything, a driver. He needs to concentrate in driving. He needs to be focused in driving. we hope that all the drivers are concentrated and how much can a mind stay focused on driving and driving home? It's impossible. Need the rest. A smart employee, supervisor, boss, we understand that and we'll demand time to rest for their staff because they know they'll be more productive. They'll be able to rest, to replenish their energy. They were able to kind of take their minds off of something and then go back and be focused again. Everybody wins, right? So the mind, and how would we develop ourselves beyond that one occupation? The driver again can only drive. Put all his mind on driving. Does not have the opportunity to deviate from that line of thought and engage in a different line of thought. Arts, entertainment, sports. I don't know, the guy may like to do something else, religiosity, spirituality. How could we develop ourselves if our mind is constantly focused in one single thing? So we have to rest. The mind has to rest. The body has to rest, right? So it is in the law of labor that is there already for us that rest is necessary. Comments next? If no comments.
683. What limits labor? It is limited by strength, but God gives human beings the freedom to decide this point for themselves.
Okay. In normal circumstances, I don't want to go into, people are being slaves, people are being abused. We know that is all true. But even in these circumstances, these conditions, the ability to limit the limit of labor, of work, will be limited by our strength, but not only the physical strength, also intellectual strength, also emotional strength. There's some kind of occupations or that amount of work over there that requires, that demands tremendous amount of emotional input. And if you don't take time to rest, you exhaust yourself, or physically, intellectually, and emotionally. Right? Now, who decides that? Well, we say, my boss says that I have to work 4 hours, take 5 minutes break, then work another 2 hours and go for lunch. Okay. Each institution, each place of work, they will have those specificities of how they wanted to divide the workload and how long we would work. That's fine. But in reality, what is really going to put that limitation is the person, him or herself. Because my boss can tell me that I have to do this 8 hours straight, but if my body cannot do it, at one point I'm going to stop. If I reach a point of exhaustion, I cannot keep up with the demand that they have for me, I have to do less. So by the time I have to do 10, I have produced 10 of whatever produced per hour. I'll do for the first hour, for the second hour, for the third hour. For the fifth hour, no longer can do 10 anymore. Maybe I'll do 8. Maybe I'll do 7. And if you the more you continue without a break, the less I'll be productive. So in reality, there are laws. There is a law that tells you that you have to do 10 per hour, or whatever you do it. But my body, myself, my physical strength, my emotional strength, my intellectual strength will dictate that limit. And in a fair society, individuals, you respect that limitations. And if they don't, again, if it's a good, smart supervisor boss, you provide that individual who is a good worker, who is not just lazy, because of course there are those who abuse the opportunity of not doing anything. Well, you understand that when you said it allow the person to take the necessary breaks as applicable. Right, of course, there are exceptions, the guy, a pilot out there, he better be able to manage those whatever hours you take in from point A to point B. You can take an airplane from New York to Manila and halfway say, I'm tired, I have to go back. Not gonna work. You have but inside the plane, there is time for that person to rest as well. Comments? Sorry. 684.
What should we think of those who abuse their authority by imposing too much labor on their subordinates? They commit one of the worst crimes. All those exercising authority shall answer for any excess labor imposed by them on those who are under their orders, because they violate God's law.
Okay, so I think in indirect, you already covered that. In reality, each one of us will reach our limit, and we're going to have a break. And again, as smart boss, we'll not wait until you reach our limit. You make sure that we take the necessary rest before you reach our limit, right? So you can be able to return and continue being productive. In a stage of slavery or semi-slavery, those who place workers at that position of being enslaved or being abused, the responsibility falls on those supervisors, those bosses, those owners, those CEOs, whatever the case may be. They are the most responsible. They have to answer for that. They will assume the responsibility for any dysfunction, so to say, of that individual who is being placed on that position of being abused or being enslaved. Whatever happens to those individuals is responsibility of those individuals in the position of leadership. They will have to respond for that. And they will have to respond if the act of that worker being brought to exhaustion affect other people. Let's say the driver have to work 24 hours straight and gets in an accident and hurts other people. Those supervisors, those bosses are responsible not only for that employee, but for everyone else who suffer those consequences. They will have to answer to that because it's, again, a kid. They committed one of the worst crimes to abuse the potential of other human beings. And why? Because they violate God's law. What do you mean they violate God's laws? It was rest. The rest is part of the laws of labor. You must allow people to rest. Comments, questions? Okay. Yes.
I don't know, I was debating here with myself
Mm-hmm.
if the comment or the question is even, I don't know, timely, because it's very simple, right? The question and the answer. But in reality, it's way more complicated. Like if there was simple as this, we wouldn't have strikes, protests, unionizing, workers trying to fight for their rights, because it's never comes from the side of the bosses or the managers. It always comes from the sides of the workers. So the answer, it feels like, okay, we are going to answer that when you go back to spiritual world, like your life is going to be manifesting that in other areas of your life, financially, family wise, or because, and then the world wouldn't be the way it is, right? To this day, people and workers, they have to fight really hard to have these rights of rest, like in the way the question is answered.
Okay. So what should we think of those who abuse the authority by impose too much labor on the subordinates? Naturally, we are speaking here of eternal spirits, right? Us as eternal spirit. And the law is eternal, but the law has to be understood. And upon understanding, it needs to be applied. So we just discussed that last Sunday in the gospel. Responsibility to our actions. There is an absolute right and wrong. For everything, there is an absolute right and wrong. But there is also the relative right and wrong. Okay? And the example that I used that I'm going to repeat here as second will be the third time that I use the same one is if I go out hunting during the hunting season with the proper license, with the proper munition, with the proper kind of guns to hunt with the proper species authorized at the proper time, and I go to the right place that is legal to do the hunting, got everything right. And I miss a target and I hit a human being. It's an absolute wrong. Somebody got shot. He's the target. An accident, yeah, an accident. But yet, wrong, because you miss the target and you shot something else. Happens to be a human being, right? Now, even our law would take into consideration all the but this, but that, right? Was an accident, didn't mean to do it. The guy was completely legal in everything else. So probably I'm not gonna have to face severe punishment for that my wrong, because they're gonna take all the relative aspects of the circumstances into consideration, right? You agree? Now imagine divine justice. You take everything into consideration, everything into consideration, right? Because God is all love, God is beneficent, God will try to give us a break as much as possible. But it's still responsible for what we have done. Now, there's two things that really defines the degree of responsibilities more than anything else. There's lots of buts and ifs, but two things are really the big issues over here, and those the relativities. One is intention, right? Do you have an intention? That's the big one. And two is knowledge. Do you know what you're doing? Right? So those individuals, those spirits who are placing others under a slave or sub-slave situation, they will respond in accordance. First, there are the absolute. Yes, it's wrong. It's against the law to put people to work against without rest. Just read here. Now we go to all the relatives. How much do you understand this? What's your intention? Your intention is really to lead these people to exhaustion just to have you one profit. How much do you understand how detrimental it is to put individuals to rest, to work without rest? So you take someone who put individuals at the stage of or position of slavery 5,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, today. Should those individuals be responsible for their actions at the same level? Or today, as we understand so much more of the detrimental aspects of forced labor, are we more responsible today than someone who done the same thing 5,000 years ago? So there is that relativity of everything, right? Now, they will have to deal with the consequence of their actions in accordance to what was the intention. And we're going to cover this also here. How much do you understand? How much knowledge do they have? But no one escapes divine justice. So
But I'm not
even if they live their life over here, define the laws, because the laws that say in the United States of America, there are laws that imposes upon the individuals who are under position of supervision or the CEOs to provide proper rest to the employees, right? If they break the law, our justice, you deal with the situation the best they can, right? But with the divine laws, they will have to deal with that regardless.
But I'm confused because the question doesn't talk about slavery necessarily.
Well, it
It talks
talks
about labor in general, so it doesn't.
it labors in there. You're right. You're right.
Because slavery is another thing. Here it says labor, forcing like people to, and then we see like just get out of our house, and then we see that, and even the pandemic triggered a lot of movements because people realized it was time to speak up and understand better the roles, right, of the people in charge and the laborers. I think that's more my point. I'm
Right.
my question doesn't
right.
come from slavery like point of view.
Yeah, but my point is the same. I use the word slavery as metaphor to make people work beyond their limitation. But even over here, someone that works in a hospital, that works in a bank, that works for Con Edison, for anything else, working beyond their capabilities, the physical, intellectual, mental abilities, is that I'm calling slavery here, not the slavery as the slaves of the past. Work in a semi-slavery situation. That's what I'm trying to say here. So
yes.
Con Edison is putting their workers to work beyond the limitation, they are responsible for doing that. And the responsibility will be in accordance to their knowledge and to their intention. If I have a company and I just care about profit and nothing else, I don't care what's happened to my workers, and I put them to work to maximize my profit, regardless of their limitations, I am extremely responsible to that. I may get caught by our local laws over here. I may not. I may bribe them with my money, but divine justice I cannot escape. So I'm sorry if they were just slave turning off, but I'm use the word slave to say working beyond a normal limit without having the opportunity to rest, without following the proper guidelines that we have today, okay, of how we should work and how we should rest as well.
Yeah, you know, as a history teacher, slavery, it's to me is the definition is like unpaid work and forced in captivity. So you said slavery.
Yeah, no, yeah,
That's
no,
where
no.
I was like, okay, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I don't mean slavery as you place it. It's when a semi-slavery situation that work beyond one's limitations. With or without a good reward, financial reward. With or without a good salary. I may go to my employees and say, I'll pay you guys well, but you guys are gonna have to work 20 hours straight. Still, with or without a good reward, financial reward, for somebody to go beyond the limitations of emotional, physical, and intellectual.
And what about the people who accept this? For example, as you're saying, okay, I accept the fact that I'm overpaid or paid much more to be under these circumstances. They are also being, violating this law somehow, or no?
Yes. If I choose to go beyond my limitations for money, of course I'm responsible for that. Even Kardec was advised, hey, you have to take a break, you're working too hard here. He did not listen, and up with a ruptured aneurysm. We all have our limitations. We have to be the first one to recognize it. If I want to work 18 hours straight to 24 hours straight for money, I'm responsible for that. Someone says, usually you should make, I don't know, 10 per hour for this kind of work. But if you work 20 hours, I'll pay you 15. And I say, oh, the money is good, I'm going to do it. For money, I'm abusing my limitations, so I'm responsible for it. And the issue of placing individuals, the subordinates, for abusing them for profit, you're going to see that here soon as well.
Hey, Elmo.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to process what you just said regarding the abuse, because evidently there is abuse, but there's cases of, and I live that, where, you make so little that they give you the option of, making little money or work extra hours in order to make enough to survive. So it wasn't forced on someone, but you pretty much got no choice. But that's another story. But my question is, for someone that has knowledge, and not saying that it's the application of knowledge, but there's the knowledge, read spiritings or whatever. Should that person try to live a life following the moral laws or the human laws? Because let's say that an entrepreneur, he might be following human laws and pay whatever is fair or whatever the law, tells him to do. But when he sees something like that, he sees that, it's not being fair in a sense when see with the moral law point of view. So what should a person in that position do or behave in that way?
So a civil, correct person will follow the laws of the land. Okay, you respect the traffic lights. You respect the laws of the land. Okay, the moral, correct person will go one step above. As an example, okay, abortion is legal. Or was it recently? The law of land allows you to perform abortion anytime you want. For some people, they will go above the law and say, no, I do not perform abortion because I understand that is denying a reincarnation, someone who needs reincarnation. Go one step above. Now, you could not in any way censor that person anyway. Right? Is living according to the law of the land. Okay? So a truly moral individual follow the laws of the land and go one step above. You follow the divine laws to the best of their abilities. Now, truth is, none of us are doing that, otherwise we would not be here. Likely would be reincarnating much more evolved worlds and not in a world of trial and expiation. We can barely follow the laws of the land. But we are moving in a direction, and as we evolve, our laws of the land will get closer and closer and closer to divine laws. So if we move to, I don't know, to let's say my next incarnation, I'm sent to go to a world where slavery still exists. Slavery as a slavery. As an eternal spirit, I already know that that's not cool. I should be the different one in that world and say, no, I'm not getting to that anymore. Because I know better as an eternal spirit. If I do get into slavery, I'm more responsible for my actions than those that I'm living with in that world, because I know better. Again, intention, knowledge. So we in an environment in which the business owners overwork their subordinates. If one knows better, move to that kind of environment and continue to practice that one is more responsible than the ones who know less. Does it make sense?
Yeah, even though it might get into a conflict sometimes, but
yeah, absolutely. That's why Jesus said, when the mother asked, put my kids next to you, what Jesus told them, are you sure they can drink from the cup that I drink? Are they sure they can go through what I'm about to go through? No one says it's easy. You're gonna have to be conflicted when you want to go one step above of the law of the land and get closer to divine laws. Yeah, there'll be a lot of conflict. If you get into politics in a place where corruption is rampant and you choose not to be corrupted, you're going to face a lot of conflict. Are you strong enough to resist? Sure, there'll be a lot of conflict. That's why most of them have a difficult, so to say, kind of life. Easy for us to see, and you applaud them. Paul of Tarsus, just read the book and see he didn't have that much fun when he did the right thing. Look at Gandhi. He didn't have that much fun when he chose to be righteous. Look at Martin Luther King. He had faced quite a few conflicts. You want to do the right thing in a world where the wrong prevails? Gotta be tough.
Thank you.
Comment.
Mhm.
The key word here is access, right? We have
Access.
Yeah, but it's very clear. So I'm asking for any access base, right? Labor for itself should never be the opposite, right? You have to build and
Access.
evolve, yeah. And the other thing, usually access will sort of like stir some kind of human passion, right? Like greed or anything that's gonna cause you to take advantage of somebody. So your conscience at some point should indicate whether you accept or not, that you're doing something against the natural law, right? So those are basically your compass for most of the stuff that you should do. I mean, down deep inside, when you're provoking somebody to do something in excess, you know, right? That is on your own.
Yeah, I believe so. When this Kardec asked the spirits, where is those laws written? What was the answer? In the conscience. So deep inside, people might know that you are not doing the right thing here, right? We make choices. Make choice to ignore our conscience because they will redirect us towards rightness, and maybe redirecting us towards righteousness will lower our social status, will lower our income, and we give more value to how much money we make than being righteous. And then it commit this kind of abuses. I think it's very hard to, especially today, to accept the idea of ignorance. Oh, I didn't know it. No, I don't think so. Choose to ignore it. But deep inside we know it. But yeah, it's greed. Anyone who's abused someone, especially today, is pure greed. There's no other word for that. Is going for putting financial profit above the limitations of another human being. Exposing someone to suffer because of your greed. With or without a relative good salary. Because a good supervisor, a good boss would kind of set up those limitations. Oh no, I want to do overtime today. No. You cannot do that more overtime because I need the year for the whole year, not for this week. Right? I need it to be good, strong, and I don't want you to go beyond your limit. A good, responsible supervisor, boss would help that individual to control that individual's own greed as well. And it's good for everyone. If I'm the boss supervisor, I want my guy to be strong, to work for me the whole year round, not work 30 hours in 2 days and then not be able to work the rest next week. It is a win-win for everyone. Now, 285, it's one of my favorite comments of Kardec. If I ever read it, one that I did not like, this one I absolutely love.
Next,
Yes, please.
685. Do human beings have the right to rest in old age? Yes. They are only required to work according to their strength. Then what are the resources for old people who need to work for a living but cannot? The strong should work for the weak. When the family does not help, society should take its place. This is the law of charity.
Thanks. Thanks, that's enough. So as we age, our strength diminish. Physical strength, at least, right? You may intellectually be stronger, but physically wise, we become weaker, increase our limitation. Comes to a point that we all deserve to rest. Our world today understand this. There is a retirement to put money aside for the retirement. When you get to that age in which making your money becomes more difficult, we have that money aside for you. not discuss if it's fair or not, if it's good or not, if it's right or not, but that's what it is. So we're not gonna be dependent on others, no, we're gonna put a little bit aside right now, and once you get old and becomes hard to work, you have the reserve that allows you to not to be dependent on others. That not always happens. When that does not happen, whose responsibility is that? First, of the family. No, worked until I cannot no longer work anymore. Now, perhaps my kids, to whom I provide the opportunity to work, to educate, and now are able to help me, becomes their responsibility to help me. First, family. If the family cannot, that becomes the responsibility of the society. And by society, you can understand the state, but not the government necessarily. The government also is part of the state. But the state is everyone, is the tribe. All of us should be able to chip in and help those who are unable to provide for themselves. The strong should work for the weak. Any halfway developed society understands that. It's no longer that point of if you're weak, you are dead meat. No, you're just gonna, we are moving around. If you cannot walk, you stay behind and let the wolf eat you up. That's no longer the case anymore. If someone gets injured, cannot walk, you carry that person. You're not gonna leave it behind to be eaten by the wolves. We understand that. And family should be the first one to take lead in providing for that person who can no longer work, due to age or any other reason, right? Disease. If the family cannot or will not, society must take that position and assist the one who is in need. And again, this is a law of charity. This is a law of charity, benevolence, right? Indulgence to the limitation of those individuals. Now, what you read now here is a comment of Kardec. And, well, let's read it first.
It is not enough to say that human beings need to work. They also should be able to find an occupation. This is not what happens. Whenever unemployment becomes widespread, it assumes the proportions of a scourge like scarcity. Economic science seeks a remedy for this problem in balancing production and consumption, but this balance is always subject to sporadic periods, assuming that it can be attained and the worker must survive during these periods. There is one element of the question that has not been considered sufficiently, and economics is just a theory without it. Education. Not merely intellectual education, but moral education, that which consists in the formation of character and habits.
Not merely intellectual education, but moral education. Got it?
No, I don't see it. I see there is one element.
See here?
Not merely intellectual education, but moral education, that which consists in the formation of character and habits which human beings do not learn from books. Education is the sum of the habits acquired. When we consider that many individuals are lost in the flood of a population without principles or direction and are left to their own instincts on a daily basis, should we be surprised by the disastrous consequences that result? When the art of education is properly understood and practiced, all human beings will have the habits of stability and prudence for themselves and for those who depend on them, and respect for what is worthy of respect. These habits will enable them to endure hard times with greater ease. Chaos and extravagance are social handicaps that only proper education can cure. And the spread of such education is the preliminary element of social well-being, which is the only guarantee of security for all.
Okay, thanks. I think this is one of my favorite comes off Kardec a couple of times, for sure. Reminder that Kardec was an educator, right? He was teachers of teachers, right? He put up a lot of books in pedagogy that is still being used in France. He wrote a book in 1824, I believe. He was 24 years old, something like that. And in that book, he says, he differentiates teacher from educator. And he says that a teacher, that it's not so hard to be a teacher. To be a teacher, you have to have knowledge. Of course, you have to know what to teach. And you have to have a good method. You have good methodology. You can be a good teacher. Have the knowledge and have the method. You have a pedagogical methodology. You teach what you know. To be an educator is more. To be an educator requires more than that. An educator has the ability to probe into the depth of the students, to see the characters, and to have themselves, the educators, what they want to pass to the students. In not the instructions of the books, but the moral education. So according to Kardec, an educator must be someone with good moral values to be able to pass to others. Because if I don't have it, I cannot pass, I don't have it. Right? And he brings his idea to this point here now, the law of labor. And the great problem that we're facing now, and that's what I believe Daniela was bringing about, has to deal with this. The way they're going to correct those anomalies, the way they're going to prevent us from disrespecting these laws, and here again within the law of labor, is through education. It is through education, but not education of the instruction of what is in the books. A teacher can do that. As long as the teacher knows and have a method of passing it, they can pass those informations. But what we need today is educators to pass along moral values that you don't gain in the books. Especially in a world today in which, unfortunately, parents cannot pass to the children because they don't have this themselves. I cannot give to my children what I have not learned myself, or what I have not conquered myself. So what Kardec is saying to us here, there's all these problems that we face in society today, that you have people get at old age and have to go to the street begging for old bread to survive. All the problems that you have today of workers, good workers, have to pick, have to strike, to demand some kind of security, to demand some kind of respect of proper hours of work, is lack of education, but not an education of the books. Because most of the CEOs are very well educated with books, very well instructed. What we need is education. We need educators, being individuals with high moral values that they can pass along. That's what he's talking about here. Education, not merely education, not merely intellectual education, but which consists in the formation of characters and habits which human beings do not learn from books. Education is the sum of all habits acquired. So I believe what Kardec is telling us here is that all the problems that Daniela brought to and it's true, it's all true. All the problems of old people not having enough to survive after they work hard their entire lives is because of lack of education, but the education in general of the society, of us. Because it's very easy for me to criticize the CEO, the supervisor, the politician, until I get there. And then when I get over there, because I don't have the education, I'll do the same thing they are doing. I'll have all the justifications to do everything that they are doing. It's very easy for me to criticize and hate the politician who's accepting bribe until I get there and somebody offers me some good volume of money to do something. If I am an educated person, I will not accept it. But that is a big if. What we need today, especially this world today, is to spread along this planet a few educators, those who have the high moral values to pass along. And once you conquer that, then there will be no more problems. There will be no people striking. There will be no old people begging from door to get a stale piece of bread. This comment covers question 683 and of course 685 that is just right over here now. And I think as spiritists, just finish our time, we need to educate ourselves and assume the responsibility of being educators. Because if I only know for myself, it's just a waste of knowledge. We need to accept the challenge and accept the conflicts that come along with that challenge that Renato alluded to. To only have the knowledge, to hold that beautiful diploma hanging on the wall and not putting the knowledge to work, it's totally meaningless. Comments, question? Our time is up. I'm glad I was able to finish it. Next week is love reproduction. Let's wrong do that. All right, let's do a final prayer. Please, Carol.
Thank you, Elmo. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, everyone, for participating. Infinite Creator and Supreme Intelligence, we are grateful to be together again as brothers and sisters for a study of the Spirit's book, the chapter involving the limit of labor and the topic of rest. Labor is a natural law or God's law. Labor is any useful activity that helps us evolve morally and intellectually. We should try to work to improve ourselves. We need to make an effort through our work to provide food, shelter, and safety. This is indeed progress, and it varies throughout the world. The more we evolve, the greater happiness and joy we will experience when we work. It will be our own reward. However, we know also that we have to appreciate our limitations. We know that in the physical body and our minds also need rest. We need to regenerate from time to time. We give thanks to the spiritual benefactors, we give spirits, the mentors, the helpers who are with us, inspiring us, providing this opportunity to learn, to have a greater understanding of the topics at hand, and to put into practice each day what these lessons have given to us. We are grateful for all we have learned, and may we go forth in the opportunity to be helpful and to be of service to others. For we know that charity is love in action. We use our humility and our discernment to find the best ways to be of help, to be of service. May we go forth and continue throughout the week with our prayers, with our study, and with our mindfulness, knowing that we are never alone, that there is always an opportunity to ask, to find out what we can do to be of service. As we ask, we give thanks to the spiritual benefactors and the good spirits for helping us to find these ways to be of service. We humbly ask that we receive the love, light, and peace of Christ to be within us, to go with us as we return to our family, friends, loved ones, and co-workers. May we help them too, and may we provide the prayers for all those in the world and all those in the spiritual world who are suffering, who need the opportunity to receive the love, the light, and our prayers of goodwill. We close now and remind ourselves to be beacons of light. May we go forth in peace, in love, in hope, and courageous charity. Go forth now in peace, so be it.
Thanks, everyone. So that is the Spiritist Symposium